The mission of the Tent Foundation is very simple, which is, as you said before, trying to mobilize the private sector, the business community to help refugees. There's lots of organizations that work with businesses, that work with the private sector that do it well. But I think what we try to do that is a little bit differently is really take very seriously the business perspective on this and really try to understand what makes sense for businesses engaging in this crisis. And I think what that means is a couple of things. So one is really trying to understand the calculus of businesses in engaging in this. And so just to give an example, there have been a number of very important studies that look at the aggregate economic effect of refugees in various communities. But if you're a business, that isn't actually that helpful. And so we've been trying to really develop data that is actually at the business level, at the firm level. And for example, this week we actually released, working with the Fiscal Policy Institute, a study that looked at the retention rates of refugee workers in US companies and finding, for example, in manufacturing, refugees turn over at a rate of 4% each year. Other workers turn over at a rate of 11% per year. We know that the cost of hiring a new worker is about $5,000 for about $13 an hour wage. That's a very clear business impact that a business can look at and actually then make a business decision. Similarly, we're working with NYU Business School. We just conducted a survey of 7,000 US consumers, testing predilection of consumers to buy from companies that do various things in the refugee space in the US, overseas, to try to build that really sort of evidentiary case for businesses. So we're really focused on the business perspective. The second thing that translates to is really trying to understand what sort of activities and commitments businesses can do that both make have the greatest impact for refugees, but also actually do deliver the greatest dividends for businesses, because that's how it gets scaled up, that's how it becomes sustainable. And in that context, we've really been trying to shift the focus from some more traditional philanthropy around purely giving out money to integrating refugee work into core business operations, in particular around companies investing in refugee enterprises, companies tailoring their services to better meet refugee needs, and companies hiring refugees and integrating them into their supply chain. So I'm not sure that we're certainly not the only ones in this space, but I think our comparative advantage is really thinking about this from the perspective of businesses.
Our story is a little bit different. We have no background in refugee issues. My husband and I, who started Talent Beyond Boundaries, are Washington lawyers. But we had this eureka moment in the summer of 2014. We were at a UNICEF fundraiser focused on the Syrian refugee crisis. And the speaker there made a big point about how many people she met in Jordan, Lebanon, could actually have been at that same fundraiser if the situations were reversed, and how many skilled people who had great brains and talent had been going to waste. And Bruce and I left that fundraiser and thought, well, you know, people all around the world need talent. Surely somebody is trying to move talent from places where it can't be used to places where it can be. And we spent some time looking at this and realized no one else was doing, so we jumped in.
Okay, I'd like to continue on the theme of lessons learned for a second. I'm going to turn to you, Jennifer. So according to one of your recent studies, you found that more than 10,000 Syrian-owned businesses in Turkey employed 9.4 people on average. You mentioned that before. Mm-hmm. And since 2011, Syrians have invested more than $330 million in the Turkish economy. Mm-hmm. This is really important evidence of how refugees can contribute to the dynamism of an economy. And yet most countries are still far more restrictive to refugees, not understanding this type of success story can happen in their countries as well. Mm-hmm. What lessons about supporting refugee entrepreneurship in Turkey could you apply elsewhere? What would be the case you would make to, say, government officials if you had the chance to speak to them? How would you pitch that?
It's a challenging question for a whole range of reasons, as I'm sure you can imagine. But what I will say is, and just to start out, on that success story of Turkey, as I mentioned, it's, those numbers have grown exponentially even since we did our large market assessment of 240 refugee-led businesses last summer. Now we have 742. Now we know that there's almost 7,000 formally registered businesses. That doesn't even include informal businesses that have been started by Syrians. So that means actually that Syrians have started on average, almost 4 formal businesses every business day of the year since 2011, which I think is just absolutely extraordinary.
In terms of the increasing dissatisfaction, I hope I answered the question. In terms of the increasing dissatisfaction, this is definitely a challenge that I think the government thinks about on a daily basis. What to announce, what not to announce, what are the benefits that are being given to Syrian refugees, and would they create any problems in terms of would Jordanians feel that they are being disadvantaged by the compact? So far, things have been calm, although I know in Lebanon, for example, things haven't been calm at all, and people were protesting and asking for Syrian refugees to be removed from urban centers. In Jordan, it is very, very difficult. I really think it is very, very difficult. The government has taken on about $5 billion worth of austerity measures in the past 3 years. Which is very significant. Prices are increasing, debt to GDP is increasing. So there are so many challenges, but that's why that's why, for example, long-term commitment or multi-year commitment from donors is very important. Well, that's why you have to deal with deep and structural issues such as growth and job generation for the longer term.
Thank you so very much.